Preetush Lal is a partner at Baringa and North America lead for digital and AI, where he draws on nearly 25 years of experience in strategic digital data, AI, and technology transformation to help organizations achieve their growth and change objectives. With that, Pratish, we're thrilled to have you at the live event today, and I am very much looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you. Looking forward to this as well. We get inundated with questions around they can actually get to AI, right? How do we assure and build confidence around their investment and their return on that investment? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And just moving forward quickly, I've been doing this for a minute. As anybody who's been doing this for more than, I guess, 10, 15 years in the AI space will tell you, it didn't start out as AI. Some of the foundational principles obviously still hold true, right? So I lead Baringa's digital and AI practice for North America. Been doing this for 20 something years. I cross over from value creation and strategy into the design and into program management and build all the way through value realization. Done some very cool programs and projects in my career, and excited to be talking to you, right? This is a real problem. Unfortunately, a large part of the investment and the sort of intestinal fortitude for the investment needs to be built before any real results are seen here, right? But with an AI transformation. So that's what we'll be talking about today. What is the actual journey, right? And this may be commonplace for some of us. It may be a bit of a surprise for others. Typically, what happens is that each of these pillars is supported by a partner of choice for the client. And as you look across this, there's the part which answers the why question, right? Why should we do this? And that's the strategy piece. What is the size of the prize? What are all the opportunities we have? How ambitious do we want to be? Those are all in the strategy bucket, right? From there, once we've made a call on why we want to do this, we get into the how, right? How are we going to do this? How are we going to transform? And again, all of this is dependent on the decisions we make in the strategy sort of portion of this. I guess the other thing I'd like to say is while I've represented these as silos and oftentimes clients will think about these as sort of steps in a process. They're largely stages that overlap, right? So just because you've done strategy once doesn't mean that you shouldn't go back and revisit that, right? There are changing market conditions, changing realities for which you want to go back and look at your strategy, right? You get new talent, you make some new hires, you make an acquisition, a competitor makes an acquisition. All that drives changes in across this entire value chain. So coming back to design, right? The focus here is how do we design a program that gets us to actually realizing the value, right? And by that, I mean, it's not just a AI model question, right? It's not just a build the mousetrap and they will come question. It covers all parts of the organization. And you'll see on the next slide how we at Baringa think about this, but it is a much more holistic design here, right? You're looking to design the transformation, think about your program and your project plans, all the dependencies, interdependencies. Within that, you're also designing an operating model for the transformation and then the sort of steady state once the bulk of the transformation has finished. With AI, as we all know, change becomes continuous, right? So how do you drive the culture and the posture of the organization to be more receptive to change ongoing? So it's no longer kind of an episodic thing where you do a transformation and then you work for 3 years and you do another transformation. With us now in the world of AI, change is continuous. So organizations have to be in a position where they can build that as part of their operating model and part of their culture and talent. And then obviously in design, you're also looking at the solution architecture. You're looking at, how do you prove that there's a there there, right? Coming back to the confidence, right? A lot of your investment is going to be made till you get to operate, but you don't really get tangible value till got to the end of this. So a lot of this is a leap of faith, and to help sort of grease the skids a little bit, that's where you'd get into what does a proof of concept look like, and how do we design that? How do we do those in a way that's representative of a real world scenario? And then you get into transformation, right? So this is now you're actually doing a lot of the transformation, and you could argue that transformation and build sort of combined in the same in the same sort of pillar. But we've split them out for kind of simplicity because the transformation piece is about assurance, right? Is about how do you do things in a way that give you the highest probability of a successful outcome on the tail end, right? At the same time, you have to have the sort of humility and the ability to adapt and pivot when things aren't going well, right? So you've done your best, and everybody's heard the Churchill quote and then referenced by Mike Tyson about everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth. But that's about transformation design, right? You maintain the value drivers. How do we get to value? What are we measuring? How are we measuring? Are we doing well? Are we not doing well? What all are the components we're going to need to get to value, right? And then you go to delivery. So this is your typical programming, project management, PMO, TMO like things. Then you got solution assurance, which is are we doing the right things? Right? Are we building, implementing, buying the right utilities and capabilities that we need? Are we hiring the right people? Are we training the right way? You've got quality assurance, which means are these things being built and designed and used in the right way? And then finally, like I mentioned earlier, you want to be able to recalibrate as and when needed. And often when, if you've gone down a path too far, you may need to be able to pull the report and pull a rescue type activity in the transformation. Then you get to build, and this is fairly self-explanatory. This is where you're actually building and implementing, doing a lot of the technology work around the AI platform, around the data layer around it, the capability layer around it. You're implementing your operating model. You're doing all the change management. You're doing the culture sort of evolution piece around being comfortable with change, right? That's all here in the actual build phase. And finally, as you start releasing things into the wild, you're going to operate, right? And this is the first time that after you've taken a leap of faith, right? You've got your POC, you've done the proof of concept, you've said, hey, there is a there. This is now getting to let's run the machinery, right? Let's use the tools and toys that we've built to create value for the organization. At the same time, let's continue evolving along that path, right? This is where the continuous change comes in. The models evolve, the data sets evolve, right? We get changes in our landscape, changes internally. The return is either meeting, not meeting, exceeding our expectations. How do we ratchet that up or down as needed from an investment perspective? How do we change velocity once we're in production? Is our operating model at a place where, we've sort of exceeded the bounds of that particular archetype, right? Are we no longer in a COE? Is that becoming prohibitive to speed or scope? So it's important for clients. It's important for you as an organization to kind of see the end-to-end game here, right? And like I was saying, it's typically multiple partners that play across this. There are a few, us included, that run the end-to-end circle at a cost-effective structure. Regardless, though, you owe it to yourself, your board. If you're on a board, then yours are responsible for making sure that you have line of sight across this entire spectrum. So moving on from there, we'll talk about what are the components that we look at, right? So we talked about the technology, and we talked about the data, and we talk about the models and the actual architecture and the use cases and all of those things we built. But to actually get from there to value, you need to make sure that you're doing the right things. And that's what this framework sort of starts out with, the strategy and the go-to-market, right? Are you looking to expand into a new market? How ambitious are we? Are we looking to catch up? Are we looking to be a leader? In which case there is more of a leap of faith they're going to take. Are we looking to architect a new revenue model for our business or for the industry, right? These sort of things drive the rest of the the framework here. Then you start looking at, okay, do we have as a business the ability to use and leverage the AI that we're investing in? It's one thing to have the tools, it's another thing to actually be able to use them efficiently, right? And continue to evolve and use them, right? This whole landscape is evolving very rapidly, and competition is going to catch up with us quickly. So once we make the investment, we got to make sure that we're exploiting this and harnessing it best we can, but continuing to push how much value we create with it. And then you get into the structure, right? The operating model and the organization. Is it a COE we're building? Are we building AOE literacy, AI literacy directly into the business functions? Are we building, how are we doing agility? How are we managing for the fact that, different parts of our organization are going to move at different speeds here, right? We want to be compliant. We want to be sort of checking all the boxes from a regulatory standpoint. How do we do all that with that much governance in the right velocity and the right kind of value delivery timeline for us? And that's where we get into governance and performance and the policies and the processes. Who are our partners here? Do we have a cohort of partners that we can pull on, whether it's to flex bandwidth, is to flex on certain specialized skill sets, whether it's to run a program, right? The operating model for the transformation is not going to be persistent once the transformation is winding down and has moved into operation. So have you thought about what the differences there would be, and how much of that institutional knowledge and the transformation knowledge are you letting walk out the door? And then you get into data and insights. Do you have the right data? All this is predicated on having the right data in the right form, easily accessible, and then the data actually being correct, comprehensive, right? And sort of cohesive. To get people to connect it, it has to be saying it has to be accurate, and you have to have enough of it that you can actually use it to drive decisions at scale. And then to do all of that, you need skills and talent, right? And this gets into your partner piece as well. But internally as an organization, do you have the talent to evolve, use the technology to mature the technology, and the use cases that you have? Right? Do you have a champion? Do you have an AI evangelist who's sort of pushing the needle? What do you have at your mid management level? What do you have at a leadership level? What do you have at an executive level? Who's your spokesperson when you start talking to the board and to the street and to corporate sponsors, if you're in that kind of a capital structure? All of these become very, very important, right? And then finally, we've touched on this a little bit already, but the culture and change readiness, you can't emphasize this enough. We've seen so many clients who've come to us and say, hey, we've got the tools, we've built it, we've bought it, we just cannot get our people to use it, right? Or we can't, with the value we're seeing from our investment is nowhere near what XYZ consulting company told us it would be. And oftentimes the answer is predicated around culture and change, right? You see so many of these unnatural things happen where clients have a tool, but then they're also doing the sort of old school, more manual process steps just to be sure, right? So now what you've done is you've actually request, you make double the work for your people as opposed to making them less work. So all that to say, oftentimes the barriers to getting to value are not the technology, right? Sometimes it is, right? Sometimes you get bad solutions and we get that. But oftentimes it's about why you're doing something. Do you have the right strategy? Do you have the right ambition? Are you aligned across the board? And then what you're going to do with it, right? Which is this assessment framework of all the software and organization componentry that goes into actually being able to use and operate that machinery. So that's what I had for today. It's been great. It's been great being with you, and look forward to talking with you more.
Pratash, I appreciate the fantastic presentation. I know a lot of individuals listening in today will have questions on how this all relates to their organizations. So, coming up on our next live Q&A panel, Pratash will be answering questions live. So, enter any questions that you have into the Q&A box that you see in front of you, and we'll get to as many of those as we can on this next panel.